There is a legend that spans all ancient cultures of a group of 7 semi-divine, demigod-like figures. We're told about them in Sumerian, Greek, Chinese, Native American, Mesoamerican, Egyptian, Indian, and more. They were said to be sent by the head god to teach mankind knowledge of civilization and religion. They were said to teach us many things, from government to mathematics to language, timekeeping, and even war. The legends differ, but these divine creatures were said to have left us sometime after the gods sent a great cataclysm to Earth in the various flood myths. But their knowledge created the base from which all human technology sprang. All civilization and farming, language, and religion was said to have spontaneously appeared out of nowhere sometime during the early Holocene and late Pleistocene. However, the earliest writings that date back to this time period tell us this group of divine sages sent by a god were the ones who taught humanity. But who were these 7 sages? We find this legend of a small number of sages arriving to teach humanity their knowledge of civilization and wisdom in multiple cultures across the world. One of them, and possibly the oldest, dates back all the way to the first civilization, Sumer in Mesopotamia. These 7 sages of Sumerian history are written in stone, among the oldest texts in existence. On several of the cuneiform tablets, including the Sumerian Kings List, where they are listed as advisors to the first kings, and in the Epic of Gilgamesh. In these ancient writings, the Mesopotamians tell us there were 7 original bringers of knowledge, who were sent by the god Enki to teach and enlighten mankind, known as the Apkallu. The texts tell us that these original immortal 7 sages were said to be divine in nature, except they didn't come from the heavens or the hand of the gods. The texts literally say they came up out of the sea, somewhere in the Persian Gulf. And they were often depicted with fish-like features, although it is important to note they were also depicted as men with wings, or as bird-like creatures. They were said to be sent by Enki to teach man how to properly worship the gods. Before that, humans did not know the right way to honor them, so the Apkallu taught them rituals and how to sacrifice. They also brought them the gifts of civilization like agriculture, language, government, arts, and they are credited as the builders of the Wall of Uruk in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And then they returned to the sea when their work was finished. In one of the Babylonian texts, the poem of Era, the god Marduk banished the Apkallu back to Abzu, the primordial waters from where they emerged. The first of these 7 sages was known as Uana, or Oannes, a creature that rose out of the sea at the beginning of history. He was described as having the body of a fish, the head and feet of a man, and a fish tail. Oannes taught mankind how to read and write, and mathematics, and gave them the tools that enabled them to build a civilization. He's described as the one who finished the plans for heaven and earth. Oannes then returned to the sea thereafter. The following description of Oannes is found in the work of Berosus, as recorded by the ancient Greek authors. In the first year it made its appearance, from a part of the Erythraean Sea, which bordered upon Babylonia. An animal endowed with reason, who was called Oannes. The whole body of the animal was like that of a fish, and had under a fish's head another head, and also feet below, similar to those of a man, subjoined to the fish's tail. His voice, too, and language was articulate and human, and a representation of him is preserved even to this day." End quote. On the Sumerian kings list, Oannes is mentioned as an advisor to the first king of Sumer, Aelu, and the subsequent sages are advisors to the next 6 kings on the list. They were said to literally act as a messenger between the gods and the king, who was said to be of divine descent. After this period of the 7 sages, the gods decided to cause a great flood to destroy the earth, spoken of in the Epic of Gilgamesh. In this ancient text it says that after the deluge, the Apkallu returned to once again bring humanity the keys of civilization by teaching them knowledge given to them by the god Enki. But the original divine 7 sages did not return, allowing part divine mortal Apkallu to bring these gifts to humanity. These later Apkallu were only considered wise men or scholars rather than sages, and only 8 post-flood kings are connected with specific Apkallu, including Nebuchadnezzar I of Babylon and Esarhaddon of Assyria. The Babylonian god Dagon is also depicted as looking similar to the Apkallu. The cult of Dagon was popular as early as 2500 BC, and he is known as the father of the god who is famously the adversary to Yahweh in the Bible, known as Baal. Scholars aren't definitive that Dagon was related to the Apkallu, but it seems very likely given their similar appearance. In the ancient Indian Hindu writings, the 7 sages or 7 seers are called Saptarishis, or the Great 7 Rishis, who taught the early Hindu peoples the yogas, gifted to them from the god Shiva. This was known as the science of Ayurveda, and included the knowledge behind India's ancient advanced medicine, architecture, and the understanding of the universe. These 7 sages in India were represented by the 7 stars in the constellation of the Big Dipper. Oddly enough, the 4 sons of Horus in Egyptian mythology are also associated with these same stars, and are said to guide the deceased to the afterlife. The 7 Hindu sages are thought to be the authors of the sacred Hindu texts, the Vedas, Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Puranas. These texts are the basis of Hindu mythology and teachings, and they are the result of the original 7 seers. They contain insight on the very nature of reality, and give us all the knowledge that makes up Hindu religion and philosophy, such as the nature of all existence, karma, and free will, and spiritual liberation. In Greek tradition, the 7 sages were 7 great men who brought knowledge and philosophy to the region, kick-starting Greek civilization and giving us concepts that were ahead of their time. These 7 Greek sages were Thales of Miletus, 624 BC to 546 BC. The first well-known Greek philosopher originally coming from the land of Phoenicia, known to be a great mathematician and astronomer. The famous aphorism, "Know thyself," engraved on the front facade of the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, is attributed to Thales. The second, Pittacus of Mytilene, 640 BC to 568 BC, governed Mytilene, or Lesbos. He tried to reduce the power of nobility and was able to govern with the support of the Deimos, whom he favored. The third is Bias of Priene. He was a politician and legislator of the 6th century BC. The fourth, Solon of Athens, from 638 BC to 558 BC, was a famous legislator and reformer of Athens, framing the laws that shaped the Athenian democracy. The 5th and 6th sages are variously given as 2 of Cleobulus, tyrant of Lindos, 600 BC, was reported as either the grandfather or father-in-law of Thales. Periander of Corinth, 634 BC to 585 BC. Myson of Chini, 6th century BC. Anarchisus the Scythian, also 6th century BC. And the 7th sage, Chilon of Sparta, 555 BC. He was a Spartan politician to whom the militarization of the Spartan society was attributed. All later Greek philosophy and mystery schools derived their knowledge from these 7 original wise men. In China, they have the 7 sages of the bamboo grove, who were early Taoist monks that established many of the founding tenets of Taoism in China. Across the world in the Americas, we find the stories of a god who brought civilization to the region of Central America and Mexico with the Mayan and Olmec cultures. They are said to go as far back as 2000 BC, and possibly even earlier. We know this god by his feathers and serpent appearance, and he was worshipped all the way through the Aztec and Spanish conquest period. They call him Quetzalcoatl in the Aztec and Kukulkan in the Mayan. He was said to have arrived on the shores of Central America on a boat made of serpents. Nobody knows where his original land was, but when he left the people after teaching them all the knowledge of Mayan civilization, he promised to eventually return. And again we see some similarities to the Apkallu in the depictions of him. To the south, among Peruvian and Bolivian cultures, we have a long-held belief that civilization began after a massive cataclysm, when the creator god Viracocha created his sons and sent them out from Lake Titicaca to found the various cultures in Peru. We find the impressive megalithic ruins of them all around South America, and if you look at the stone carvings at Tiwanaku, you can see a group of angelic beings surrounding the god Viracocha on the main gate. And these beings that we find carved all the way in South America look identical to the depictions of the Apkallu that we find all over Mesopotamia, on the opposite side of the world. And just west to the Incan culture sits an ancient monument on an isolated island in the Pacific, the 7 Aha Akivi Moai statues, the founders of the Rapa Nui culture, and they are said to be aligned to face toward their homeland directly at the setting sun in the west. Thank you so much for watching this one. There is more to discuss on this topic of sages who brought the world's civilization after the cataclysm. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Also, you can watch these videos ad-free on Patreon for only $3. So go check that out and support the channel. I'll see you all at the next video.